morning. My name is Emmett Reed. I want to welcome you to the Nursing Center Emergency Preparedness Summit. I'm the Executive Director of Florida Healthcare Association. I want to thank everyone here and welcome you all for taking time out of your day to come. And I also want to thank everybody that's watching on the World Wide Web. We're streaming this live both on our own website and the Florida channel. So thank you all for taking the time to be here. I'm really encouraged and pleased to see the interest and the turnout for all of you who were able to gather so quickly after this executive rule came out. We have special guests that either have or will join us today, and I want to recognize them if you will hold your applause to the end. But I know that Secretary Justin Sr. with the Agency for Healthcare Administration, Senator Rene Garcia from Hialeah, Representative Jason Brodeur from Sanford, Representative Emily Schlossberg from Delray Beach, Representative Cindy Stevenson from St. Augustine, and Representative Stan McLean from Ocala. And also we're expecting our VA Secretary, Colonel Glenn Sutphin, to join us as well. All of us at the Florida Healthcare Association, and together with our friends from Leading Age Florida, are committed to the tremendous responsibility of keeping our residents safe during disasters. The caregivers in this room and across the state serve our most vulnerable citizens, and you do a great job of it. Thank you for what you do. Give yourselves a round of applause, by the way. Today we're here to talk about generators. Installing generators that can power a nursing center's air conditioning is extremely complex and takes time to ensure that it's done right. We brought together some experts today to help shed light into just what's involved in this process. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge in this room today. We hope at the end of the day we can walk away with solutions to know how we can best achieve what the governor has laid out with his emergency rule. At this time, I'd like to welcome Steve Bamer, President of Leading Age Florida, to the stage. Steve, give him a round of applause while he walks up, please. And while he's walking up, I want to thank Steve and Leading Age Florida for partnering with the Florida Healthcare Association on co-sponsoring this, but also on working with us before, during, and after Irma. Thank you, Steve, for your help.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Emmett. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of Leading Age Florida and our members across the state, welcome. Thank you for making the time and the trip, in many cases, to Tallahassee this morning to participate in what will no doubt be an immensely important conversation. I think Emmett has done an excellent job of laying out the context, and I know every one of you in the room today understands the challenge, but also understands, and as Emmett said, accepts the enormous responsibility that comes with caring for residents. So I appreciate that very much. I want to thank Emmett and the Florida Healthcare Association for their partnership on this event and for their leadership. I would be remiss and perhaps a tad dishonest if I didn't ask you to provide a round of applause for Emmett's staff, who did all the heavy lifting for this event today. I also want to just take a second to echo Emmett's comments about the work that you all have been doing. I know that in the last 18 or 20 days we've talked a lot about the heroic efforts that nursing home providers across the state have undertaken to care for residents in the most extremely difficult circumstances. That's certainly true. I think one of the items that we'll talk about today is that it has not just been the last 20 days. It has been the last 12, 16, 18, 24 months. This is a year-round effort for you. We know that, and we appreciate it. I thought I might also point out just very quickly the importance of networks and these organizations, these communities working together to care for seniors. Emmett's team and my team worked closely together throughout the course of the hurricane. So we know that when the situation necessitated it, when the situation called for it, you banded together and found ice trucks and 800 pounds of ice and drove them down the west coast of Florida to make sure your residents had what you needed. You donated thousands of meals and thousands of gallons of water to communities that didn't have what they needed, power outages and out of food. Those networks are powerful, and that network exists in this room today, and we appreciate you being here for it. We also echo Emmett's sentiment. Leading Age Florida, we strongly support the governor's effort to ensure that residents remain safe in a disaster. I don't think there's a person in the room who would disagree with that. We look forward to this conversation today and the opportunity to seek solutions together to determine how we can ensure that that remains the case. Thanks again to the Florida Healthcare Association. Thanks to all of you, and we look forward to the conversation.
All right. Thank you for Steve. Representative Atkins, hi. I didn't see you here. Welcome, welcome. Commissioner Truex, hello. Thanks, Steve. Now I'd like to ask Joe Mitchell, the Florida Healthcare Association's immediate past president and CEO of Summit Care, to the stage. Please welcome Joe.
Thank you, Emmett. We're pleased to have with us today the Secretary of the Agency for Healthcare Administration, Florida's regulatory agency for nursing centers and other healthcare facilities. Secretary Justin Sr. and his team at ANCA were a tremendous partner to us throughout Hurricane Irma, and we are grateful for all the support we received. And I just want to comment and say that I happen to know that he spent countless hours at the EOC, and we certainly want to say thank you for that, and we do appreciate. I know you guys worked endlessly at that job. On behalf of Florida's long-term care providers, I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary, and your team for being there for us and for our residents. Would you all join me in welcome Justin Sr., Secretary of ANCA? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we've been through an extraordinary time period here with Hurricane Irma, and we certainly appreciate at the agency, and the governor appreciates everyone being here today. I know that we all share the same goal, which is we want to make sure that the elders in the state of Florida are protected in the event of an emergency, and I really appreciate the spirit of collaboration that's brought you here, because we are here to work with you to make sure that Florida's elders are protected. Last week, as you know, the governor took significant and meaningful action to ensure that nursing facilities and assisted living facilities in the state would have enough power to power their air conditioners for 96 hours in the event of a power outage like the one that happened with Hurricane Irma. And we do think that this is going to be a significant step forward in the safety that our elders experience during a crisis like Hurricane Irma. We're going to be working aggressively across the state in the coming couple months to ensure that every facility is fully prepared to comply with these new requirements. Let me talk a little bit, and I'm not going to be here for long, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what led to the rule and the types of experience that we had. There's no such thing, I think, as an ordinary hurricane or as a normal hurricane. Every storm has its own unique characteristics and properties. But the way that we strategize for a storm from an emergency operations standpoint, and we work very closely with the associations and with the industry and with the nursing homes directly, a lot of outbound calls, a lot of communication, a lot of creating doorways and pathways for facilities and the associations to communicate with us so that we can get information into a system we call Florida Health Stat, which lets us know both what your needs are in the event of a power outage, in the event of some other calamity that may have befallen the facility, but also what your resources are. And if a storm, for example, is to hit Tampa, we could potentially look into Florida Health Stat and understand that there are resources in Miami in terms of generators, in terms of fuel, in terms of food, in terms of ice, that can be brought to bear in Tampa for the folks that are without power. What happened with Hurricane Irma is we had a storm that really knocked out every single major metropolitan area in the state of Florida in a single swoop. It hit Miami, it hit Fort Lauderdale, it hit Palm Beach, it hit Naples, it hit Fort Myers, it hit Tampa, it hit St. Pete, it hit Orlando, even hit Jacksonville, and knocked a little bit out here in Tallahassee. There's no, the way that our population is distributed, a storm that takes out power to more than 70% of the people on the peninsula and nearly 70% of the customers in the entire state, we're not in a position where resources can be brought to bear from Pensacola to serve that type of population. And so what we had was a situation where it was all need and very few resources for at least the first 48 hours, maybe a little bit longer of this storm. And looking at that, I had given out my cell phone number. I had a lot of opportunity to talk to facilities during the course of the storm. There is, I have to say, and I do appreciate it, and my wife appreciates it, there seems to be an unwritten rule that you don't call the secretary between midnight and 4 a.m. in the middle of a crisis. So I do appreciate that. And I certainly didn't mind the calls at 4:20 and things like that. Just to understand what was going on, it gave us a lot of insight into some of the things that have happened, and a lot of the things that then informed the rule. 96 hours. Let me talk first, is that what we would really like is that all of the facilities have some place where the residents can go, all of them, and congregate safely and reside during the course of an emergency. As we flesh out the emergency rule, one piece of guidance that we're doing, we're trying to put out frequently asked questions. One of them is, do you have to be able to air condition every single square inch of your facility? The answer to that is no. What we want you to do is to be able to air condition enough of your facility that the residents can safely reside in that portion for 96 hours. And if you do that, we can be comfortable that hyperthermia is not a threat, and we can make other arrangements and deal with other crises as they happen. We chose 96 hours because as we were looking at the way that power was coming back in the state during the course of the storm, we could see that by the Thursday mark, which is about 96 hours after the storm hit, by Thursday midday, mid-afternoon, which would have been the 96-hour mark, about 80 to 90% of the state would have had power again. And at that point, the script would have flipped, and we'd have a situation which is the one that we've traditionally planned for, which is where we're moving resources around and we're matching the needs of the facilities that have need with the ones that have resources. And we could actually see by that fourth day that the storm hit where we thought it hit, right? It hit in Monroe County, and then it hit Collier, and it hit Lee, and that's where the majority of the power outages were by that time. But the vast majority of folks by Thursday in Miami-Dade, in Broward, and in the Tampa Bay area, they had resources all of a sudden, and they were communicating to us that they had beds, that they had generators, that they had fuel, that they had resources that could be brought to bear. And so that's where the 96 hours came from. As we talked to people both in advance of the storm and after the storm, there have been some questions about whether, if we just evacuate our facility, if that's part of our emergency management plan, is that okay? The answer is no. What we saw in this storm was evacuation plans generally fell through. And in fact, there was no place to run and no place to hide. And folks that had evacuation plans would suddenly realize that the place they were going to evacuate to was every bit as dangerous as the one that they were leaving, or that place had evacuated as well. And so what we saw was a situation in a very catastrophic storm where evacuation plans really can't be relied upon as, well, I'm going to go to an air-conditioned place, because it didn't necessarily happen. People had to shelter in place, and they ended up sheltering in place without air conditioners with frail elders. The other thing we saw, as we talked to people, I had a number of interactions with facilities where they had made arrangements for 48 hours in advance of the storm that a generator would appear with fuel. I think there must have been somebody along the I-75 or something that was offering a lot more money for these generators than the facilities were, because these generators were not making it to the facilities, the fuel was not making it to the facilities, and those plans were falling through as well. And that's why we could not allow someone to arrange for that type of late delivery. It doesn't appear to us that type of late delivery is reliable. We need to have generators on site that can power some portion of the facility and keep the residents comfortable for about 96 hours until the script flips and we can play the resource need game where we can match facilities up in need with those that have resources. I do have to say, in the grand scheme, in the big picture, the population of the country and of this state is getting older. We're going to have a larger proportion of our populations that are in settings like nursing facilities and also in community settings like assisted living facilities. That wasn't really the case. I think there's a lot more people in those types of settings now than there were 10 years ago. And it's highly likely that there will be a lot more facilities and a lot more people in those placements 10 years from now. So it's really, this is the opportunity to learn lessons from this storm and to better prepare the state in the future and to protect elders and make this the #1 place in the country to grow old, to retire in. I also have to say one other thing, and that is that when the history of this storm is written and people look at the people who tragically lost their lives, it is possible that we will see that more people died of carbon monoxide poisoning than died of hyperthermia. as you put these systems in, it is imperative that you do it properly, whether it's a portable generator for a small facility or a large generator, that you do it properly so that we are not trading one danger for another. And that's going to be very important to us as we look at these emergency management plans and we put them online. We will be tracking compliance. We will be updating regularly the facilities and I know that there are a number of facilities in the state that are already in compliance with this rule. We'll be publishing a list of facilities over the coming weeks that are in compliance and that are coming into compliance as they come into compliance, and tracking the rule. And I really appreciate all that you do. I know that there was a significant tragedy and loss of life, and it's just a very painful and haunting thing, I think, for all of us that happened. But I also want to say thank you to all of you because of all the work that you did with us, with the agency, and all that you did for your residents. And I think that the work that was done in this storm was extraordinary and saved a lot of lives. I know that my team has made more than 1,000 visits, physical visits, to facilities in the days after the storm. If they found conditions that they were concerned about, they stayed at the facility until resources arrived or until that facility could be evacuated to make sure that everyone was safe. I know that all of you took extraordinary precautions to keep people safe during the course of the emergency. And so I want to say thank you for that. I know that it's the headlines are very difficult sometimes, and certainly what happened down there should never happen again. And so we will work with you as partners to make sure that it never happens again, knowing that we all have the same goals. With that, I'll turn it back over to Ed.
Thank you, Secretary. We appreciate all the work that you and I think Molly McKinstry and Kim Smoke are here. Thank you all for what you've done. All right, before we get started, I told you I have a lot of experts in the room to talk the issue through. Before we get started, I have some housekeeping items I have to go through. If you haven't done so already, please silence your cell phones so we can avoid any disruptions. Also, if you have a parking ticket, we will validate that for you on your way out. So don't forget to get that validated, please. We have a full agenda today and limited time for each panel. If you need to step away to take a break, feel free to do so at any point. We're only going to have one formalized break, and that's for lunch at noon. We have complimentary box lunches for everybody. Grab your lunch. We're actually going to take a little bit of time to let you talk with each other about what you've heard during lunch, but that's the only break you're going to get, so do not feel like you are strapped to your seat. You can get up and go if you need to take calls or whatever. As far as questions from the audience go, we want to try and get as many questions as possible into the panel. To help streamline this, we're asking you to write down the questions on the pad provided at your tables in front of you. And everyone look back at Teresa, wave. Christina, stand up. You see these blue shirts here? We got all sorts of blue shirts around the room in the corner. If you have a question that you would like the panelists to answer, just hold it up in the air at any point and we'll come and get it from you if they haven't answered your question already and we have time. The moderators will do their best to get through all the questions. If we can't get to all the questions, on our website we're going to compile a Q&A document that will be made available to you. So if you don't get your question answered today, which we're going to try really hard to do, it will be on our website.